Welcome to Om on the Range, where we share the practice of meditation, the wisdom of Western Buddhism, and the refuge of our community. Whether you are new to meditation or a longtime practitioner, committed or curious, this offering is here to share solutions, stories, and support. Happiness and better health are available to everyone. It just takes practice. This is Om on the Range. Welcome to Om on the Range. I'm your host, Whit, and we are very happy to have Jordan Cawley joining us as co-host this week. Jordan, thank you for returning to this offering. It's always a pleasure to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Whit. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so we're in the last week of 2025, or 2025. Boy, that was hard for me. Last week of 2025, and we're in between two major holidays, and that statement is almost true for anybody, regardless of what holidays they celebrate, because there are just so many at the end of the year. So, on one hand, this time of year is it's busy. There's a lot of gatherings. There's a lot of celebrations. There's a lot of stress. But on the other hand, it's also a lot of emotion, and it can be challenging. It does lend itself to a large amount of podcast content. So, Jordan, what does this time of year mean for you?
I would say immediately reflection came up. At the end of every year, I think it's a good time to just kind of reflect where you've been on the path and the twists and turns of your life, and just a good sense of not wanting anything to be different, but just accepting things for how they are. And I think it's healthy to just note it, not create a drama around it, or wish again it was different, but just reflection. I don't mind this time of year. I used to be very have a strong aversion to it, just because of that sense of reflection, because I always held myself to some standard of where I should be or what I think I should be doing. And as I practice Buddhism, it helps me to understand that alone is suffering. So yeah, reflection in short.
Well, I'm kind of the same way. I think it's interesting that as someone I'm a self-professed lover of Christmas and the holiday season, from Thanksgiving all the way through. I've learned to love this time of year, though, because everything has, the grand rush has kind of happened, and we've had Christmas, and when I was younger, that used to be kind of a sad time. I think that's true for a lot of people, because they work so hard, or they're so excited, or for whatever reason, there's a lot of buildup, and then it passes. And then you're left with these 6-7 days before New Year's. But I've learned to kind of embrace what the possibilities are with this time. There is some reflection, certainly. There is. It's funny because for some reason it's a good time to look forward as well as to look back. And I think as you develop a practice, one of the things is you get comfortable with that ability to look forward and look back without getting weighted down by the stories, the anticipation or the regret. Instead, you just understand that, hey, this is a good week for these feelings, whatever they are. And you can be kind to yourself and not be so judgmental or happy or sad based on what you think this year has been and what next year might be. So I really enjoy this, because it is such a drastic change from where we were a week ago, for example, when we were all kind of ramping up, and now we get to experience that, in another direction. Now we're ramping down, and I always think it feels pretty good, frankly. So, is that pretty accurate for kind of how you look at this time of year as well?
Yeah, I feel like this time of year for sure is you hit the head on the nail, in the sense of right after Christmas, everything kind of slows down. You know, I will I did laugh today because I did go to the store and see Valentine's Day stuff up. So I was like quickly reminded we live in such a capitalist society. But, I would say on just like a spiritual level, there's like this nestling, there's this coziness of just kind of hunkering down for winter. I mean, today it got so cold so fast, and I was reminded, and not to weather talk, but yesterday was 65 degrees. And so I was like, maybe I should put away my coat. And then today I was like, maybe I should not put away my coat. And yeah, I just, the ability to be flexible through winter emotionally and spiritually as we kind of move past like this consuming and just getting excited for the future, but not missing the moment. It's so important. I love my window at my house because I get to see this family of squirrels, and I'm literally watching this like young, just yearling squirrel grow up. And it's fun for me that I have a practice that allows me to notice the squirrels in my yard. And,
All right.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's great that you've got that ability to tie in your feelings with what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, because it's all part of the practice, right? And you do start to see those connections. Now, I will also tell you that I did not have squirrel talk on my bingo card for our episode tonight. That's good. I feel like we got that out of the way pretty quickly, so that's a strong start. So I was hoping we could look a little bit at New Year's and at resolutions and that idea of fresh starts. Uh, and lend some of our perspective as practitioners and as I'm going to call us Western Buddhists. So if you're okay with that, I had a couple of points I thought we could kind of work our way through. The first one being that New Year, it reminds us about about that life is always changing. I think a lot of us look at January 1st and it makes it feel like, hey, this is a new start. And that's true. That's the way we feel. It's not really true in that it's really just another day, that happens to be on January 1st. But with our habits, our moods, our lives, one of the things I thought was interesting was, you can look at January 1st as being this fresh start, but we also have that ability to have that every day. We don't need January 1st. We don't need a holiday. There's nothing wrong with the idea of having that holiday. But as practitioners, don't you feel like we have a pretty good idea that, hey, we can start fresh anytime? And realistically, that is naturally what is happening. We are starting fresh because things are changing all the time. Do you find that to be true?
absolutely. In Buddhism, we emphasize intention, the right intention, and that instead of these like rigid goals, the right intention is just about cultivating like these qualities such as kindness and non-harm and wisdom. And then these intentions guide the behavior gently without aggression towards yourself. So that's kind of, you know, making sure you're following in these guidelines, these kind of bumpers per se on how you're living your life. And that's what I kind of found in the sense of setting those intentions. I find that many resolutions are often from aversions towards ourselves, which is just such like a negative space to be coming towards a goal anyway. So I believe that when change begins in self-rejection immediately, it tends to reinforce suffering rather than relieve it. And so that's why I want to make sure anyone kind of marching towards a specific goal, you're right, absolutely. You can start at any time and you can begin again. So even let's say the end of January, you fall short on one of these goals that you might be trying to reach, you can just begin again, just like every day is January 1st or every 30 minutes or every 5.
Right.
Sometimes these goals do need to be met on a minute to minute process. So you can stretch it out. That's the kind of cool thing I think about the quality of time is you can kind of, you don't have to live so rigidly by that even, but that's a little woohoo.
Well, but with Western Buddhism in particular, and with having a meditative practice, because I don't think it's one is more exclusive or important than the other. But it's so true that you can start at any time and you can restart. And not only can you do that, but you have to do that. And so if you don't recognize that, you're selling yourself short and you're probably not being as aware as you need to be with life. Because I don't mean to lecture anybody at all. I'm just saying, though, that things do change all the time and you do have to restart. And sometimes you get to, look internally and feel that need or that growth or whatever has spurred on this change. But sometimes things happen outside that are maybe outside your control. Maybe your job changes or your relationship changes or your health or whatever. All of those things play a role. There's so many things that are changing all the time that, to not understand that you're really starting over and over again. It's very Groundhog Day in that it happens over and over again. It's very not Groundhog Day in that it's never the same twice. So that's kind of the challenge with it. But again, you're selling yourself short if you think that, hey, it's January 1st and I'm going to be this new person and then I'm going to do, there's nothing wrong with. I think it's a great idea to approach January 1st as a holiday that gives you that option. But I think it's an even better lesson to understand that, hey, you may have to restart, like you said, 4 or 5 times in the next hour, or at least 2 or 3 times during this podcast. So, just being comfortable with that, developing that spiritual agility to, to accept that and to live that way without fear and without judgment. And because it's happening. That's the bottom line. Just like all the good points for Western Buddhism and for having a meditative practice all come back to the same thing. And it's like, because this is all true. This is truly what is going on. You should be aware of it and you should be comfortable with it. And it'll make your life happier and healthier because there's less suffering. So I feel like I got way over my skis on that one. But that is the beauty of the holiday. But the bigger lesson is that, hey, just be good at restarting. Constantly look for what, listen to what's speaking to you at that moment and live that way.
What's speaking to you is such an interesting way to direct yourself, your inner attention towards yourself. I never really understood, all the time my conscious was speaking to me if it was always had my best intentions. So sometimes I could be very self-destructive or easily manipulated. So I would challenge people to also, when you're trying to adapt yourself to be a different you, to pay attention to the influences on which are guiding you. Like when you're hanging around a lot of people who are meditating and trying to adopt a meditating practice, or it would probably be more beneficial for you to try to adopt that versus, going sugar-free so your skin looks better, right? So it's like, I want to pay close attention to why I'm trying to change myself too, because that can just easily set yourself up for future insecurity too if you don't make those goals.
Right.
Self-exploration is such a beautiful process. And I remember, some of the big things people quit is alcohol. And I remember previously trying to quit alcohol a few different points in my life before it sticking. And now I'm encroaching 8 years without alcohol. And that's so incredible. But I had to go through those other times to essentially fail and then quit again. So, I would just trek lightly with yourself and be kind with the experience. And then, it doesn't have to be necessarily sugar or alcohol quitting. You could be picking up exercise or whatever, the classics are, but just paying attention to that influence and then just being gentle on yourself as you teach yourself to love yourself through these changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you hit on a couple of different times, especially as it applies to resolutions. We so often come to them because, hey, we're not good enough. I'm not thin. I'm not happy. I'm not healthy. I'm not rich. I'm not, I don't know, popular, whatever that thing is. Those are all dangerous, negative points that you're really reinforcing. Even if you become let's say you decide that, hey, I'm not thin, so I'm gonna start working out so I become thin. Well, again, you're going from a negative point and you're trying to apply something that's positive. Exercise is fine, but it, even if you lose the weight or whatever that is, then you're gonna have a new reason not to be. Okay, well, now I'm not good enough because I'm not this. I'm thin, but now I'm sad. I'm uncomfortable. I'm whatever. So I think resolutions are fine if they come from a positive spot and you don't overemphasize what you think you're about to gain. So I think, if you feel like, hey, I'm going to make this change because I'm unhappy or I'm not good enough, maybe those are two different things. If you're not happy, let's not try to lose weight. Let's try to be healthier. That I can kind of get behind. And maybe it's more important well, what are the real reasons why you're not happy? Because it's
Right.
probably not just, I don't know, appearance or being lonely or whatever it is. Um, I just think that it's a better point to say, hey, let's better know ourselves. You mentioned, hey, this self-discovery is such a great journey, and it is, but it's really not possible to make unless you are going to start trying to be more kind to yourself. Unless you're comfortable with getting to know who you are in this very moment, and being happy with who that person is, because if you're doing it for any other reason, it's going to be negative. It's going to be hard. You're not going to change, that feeling inside. You might change how you look or what you have, but if, on the other hand, if you love this person that you are today, and hey, I'd love to be a little healthier, then that's a great idea and a great step forward. But you don't abandon loving that person if you don't drop 10 pounds, or if you don't get the new job, So I
Yeah.
think that's why so many people have such a love-hate relationship with New Year's, because they don't think it through. They don't think about what's driving them to take on these resolutions in the first place. Um,
I know there's this like practice that you can do very easily. If registering self love is so hard, and we could probably spend a whole podcast talking about that too, because it is important. Like what you're saying, I mean, we know it. You can't love yourself unless, you can't love others unless you love yourself. And while we know that's true, it's so hard to cultivate that. And so, an easy practice I've seen is get a physical, tangible picture of someone or something that you love, whether it being an animal or a person, and just sit with the picture and focus on that. And then have a picture of yourself and then try to shift that same love that you have on yourself onto that picture of yourself. And it's interesting because immediately, if you sat and we paused this podcast and you did it, a lot of people will see this dividends in the love that they have for this other person or pet versus themselves. And so there's something there, I think. It's very interesting. I mean, if we just spend the next year just focusing on shifting our intentions of loving our internal world, ourselves, I can't imagine what this place would be like, because I know hurt people hurt people. And when I'm hurt, I am feisty and I want other people around me to be hurting just as much as I do. But really deep down, it's my child self. It's just, me yearning for that love. So it's intense, that self-reflection can be so challenging. And I bet I mean, at least for me, and I'm sure it's challenging for other people too. Um, but I never want to give up on myself in that sense. I never want to, because I know it benefits everyone around me too if I am just a little more kind on myself. So yes, it's a perfect time of year to just do that, and um, just sit, with those concepts. They're harder to talk about, I think, than to just do.
right, right. So would you agree, in general, if for people that are listening to this podcast, or that are interested, whether they have a practice or they want to develop one, that a healthy resolution, from our point of view, is something like, I want to live with more kindness. I want to live with more awareness, more acceptance, and that I want to start with myself. And I word it that way because I feel like that is the kind of resolution that could be life changing for someone, or just like you said, hey, I'm going to look for practices. I want to look for ways to love myself more, not because I'm an egomaniac or I'm arrogant or I'm much better than everybody else in the world, but because I know that if I love myself better, I'll be able to love others better. And like you said, what would the world be like if we did that? And it's a hard practice because it doesn't come naturally. Or maybe it did, but it was, for whatever reason, I almost said it was beat out of us, but that's not true. That's like not fair. These are times when I'm glad my parents don't have access to this podcast. But for some reason we're not taught that. That's not how our world works. And I would say that it's maybe a Western world thing, but it's
Yeah.
not. The where these teachings came from had the same, they still do have the same issues. They, self-love and getting to know yourself and spending time and accepting with what you find are still pretty foreign. I don't care where you live or what sort of circumstances you live under. So as a show, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot and tell you that that's now our official resolution for everyone that listens. And really, we could wrap up right here because I didn't think we'd ever get to that point. But just to try to practice and develop more love for yourself because it'll make you happy, it'll make you healthy, and it'll allow you to love others more as well.
And it reduces those cravings and the dissatisfaction. So, absolutely, I'd love to adopt that moving forward. And it'll be interesting. Let's reflect with next New Year's,
Okay.
and let's see how this year, if we just step our own intentions forward as to, it's that self-compassion, because, I can be very hard on myself. So trying to make things perfect, maybe people can, s- align with me in that sense, trying to make things right for everyone around me. They're rooted in good and benevolent things.
Right.
That's the funny part, is I can be very hard on myself about helping out my neighbor.
Right. Right. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Um, do you think because of your practice that you love yourself more? Is that fair?
That's a wonderful question. And I think I would like to sit on that. But I do know that I have more self-respect and tolerance for my mistakes, and I see them as teachers. And I never get furious with myself anymore. Maybe annoyed at best, like a sibling.
Yeah.
You just love yourself regardless, unconditionally. And I don't damn myself for the things that I don't know. I'm ignorant, and I like beginner's mind in that sense, because that ignorance is not because I'm stupid. It's just because I don't know better all the time. So I don't know how to solve all of my problems. I may not have learned, all of the tools and the trades that I need to be successful. But those are kind of the bumps in the road that help me grow as a person. If I just knew what we were doing all the time, I would be like a computer or something.
I
I would have no room for error. So that error is kind of like the art. So, yeah,
right. Well, and I think it also lends itself to a good kind of definition, a practical definition of what impermanence means, from
correct.
the Buddhist perspective, because it drives everything. It's the change. It's what life is. It's time moving forward. It's the things that happen in the present, and showing you that, hey, this is what's happening right now. It's not good. It's not bad. This is what's happening. How can you react to it? And also, by the way, the things that you are mad about in the past or afraid of in the future may or may not happen. And they certainly aren't going to unfold and didn't unfold the way you remember them. And that's difficult for people because we're so sure that we remember everything right. And we're so sure that we can see where this is all going. Even if we won't admit it to anybody else, I think there are times when that happens. And so that impermanence, it drives this whole practice. it drives this whole, because what it's trying to teach you is nothing's going to stay the same, everything's going to change. It's not worth judging because you don't know. It's not worth trying to fix because you probably don't have the powers to do so. What you can do, though, is observe, be aware, accept it. And by the way, love the fact that you get to do this, understanding what a gift this is. So I think that's where impermanence and practice intersect. But all that just came to me, so I don't know if that's true or not.
Hey,
We'll
speak
have to
it.
edit that
Yeah,
part out.
no, keep it. Each moment is already new, so it's gone.
Right, right.
But each breath, that's another thing is we practice presence. So each breath arises and passes away. And then that's it. I mean, Jim Morrison's so funny. He has a quote: "Some of my worst mistakes in life were haircuts." And I love that because
That is great.
yeah, because I mean, it simplifies it and it should be simplified. I mean, not to disregard people's trauma because I know I've been through some traumatic things and I know people around me have, but I incorporate it. It's like a watercolor. It's like I don't have to paint with that color. I don't like painting with that color, but I'm not going to throw out the whole easel. So,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. That's a great analogy. Just what colors you choose to pick, both how you see the world, how you reflect to the world, what you think your colors are like on the inside, or maybe what they are, frankly. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I think also it's interesting with change and impermanence and resolutions in this time of year, and people trying to decide maybe how life can be. I'm going to say more. That seems like the simplest way to describe it. I think it's important that people understand that they don't have to do this alone. And so if it's important to you and you feel like the reason you want to make this change is both important and positive, that it's not just I'm not good enough and this will make me better. One of the most powerful things you can do is share it with someone you love, with someone you trust. Um, I think there's the old AA saying that we're only as sick as our secrets. And I find that to be so true. I'm not an AA member, but I no longer drink, and I certainly can relate to that struggle to some extent. And I think it's a great organization, but that one in particular is so true. It's like, hey, if you've made this resolution to do something and you're not comfortable telling someone you love or trust about it, then maybe you need to revisit that. That would be my nickel's worth of advice, because if it's true and good and good for you and coming from the right place, then I think it's something you would want to, you don't have to build your whole life around it, and you don't have to tell everybody, but I think it is something that you should feel comfortable sharing. And I think if you don't feel that way, then maybe you need to re-examine, the reasons behind it.
In terms of AA, I know they also say like new uh, playgrounds, new playmates. I like that one too, because you're right. Transformation is not a solo project. You kind of need that community, that sangha, that group of people who's going to support your path. So, whether you're just looking for fellow friends or you're really trying to make that transformation, I know, at TBC we have recovery groups that draw in people on Sunday service. And so they kind of wander in and they're not quite sure of what they're learning, what they're hearing, but they've came in from this path of recovery. So everybody's kind of intertwined their ways, and woven themselves into the fabrics of Sangha for different reasons too. So that's the cool part about when you get out and start talking to people.
Right.
The relation is so interesting, and you might relate in ways you just had no clue that you could relate with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is interesting what brings people in. And a lot of times they've tried other things, whether it's other religions or whether it's, self-medicating, for example, or other practices, or, and all that is great in that those experiences led them to continue on and maybe come to a path, like I said, that's a little more practical.
Right. And
All
it's
of
not
our
about fixing a flawed self. It's
right.
more an ongoing practice as we sit and we notice and then we return. And then that growth happens through the repetition and practice and willingness to begin again.
Right.
So
And now we're back to, hey, and it's a great journey if you can love yourself. That's a great, it's really hard if you don't have the kindness and the love for yourself and for what you're going to find. And then you can only go so far with that self-discovery and that self-growth. It's very limited and it's very difficult if you don't love who you are and what you are and what you've been through and maybe what you're going to do, all those things. It just becomes a key part of how you live. And until you're ready to give yourself that, like I said, it's very limiting where you can go. But this is the right arena for that kind of growth, for that kind of realization. And so that's a good reason to make it. If you don't feel like, you love yourself, if you don't feel like you know yourself, this is where that can all be accessible. And not only can it be, it will be. You come in and you're sincere with your effort. We have the tools, whatever that means. The practice, just sitting with yourself will allow you to develop that, because you start to realize that that's all there is. I don't know. I don't think anybody said it but me, but it's like you don't spend all your life wishing you were a giraffe. You're not a giraffe. I don't know why I'm picking on giraffes either. I don't even care for you. But for some reason, I think originally in my head, it was like I'm like a hippopotamus that wishes he was a giraffe, which is a terrible analogy. And it's going to look even worse on a t-shirt. But now it's become, I'm not a giraffe, which doesn't make sense to anybody but me. But again, it's like, I am this, and this is great because this is what I am. And, so you embrace that and you become the best giraffe you can be, or hippopotamus or wit, whatever you are. So again, this is something we're probably going to have to edit out, but I'm glad we got to this. Just a couple other things as it retains or as it applies to this time of year where we take on this making changes and a new start and resolutions. If you have made some choices that feel positive and that you feel like you're doing them for the right reason and you're comfortable sharing them, then I think it becomes a question of, let's make sure that we're balanced with how we approach them, that we don't, if you decide you're going to be a runner, don't go run 10 miles on day one. Go for a 30-minute walk and see how that feels. Build this, let it grow organically, and be kind to yourself and to this journey that you're on. It's fine to utilize force to get started, right? But the power is in doing it in such a way that is natural and forgiving and comfortable for you.
see, wait, I didn't anticipate hearing about giraffes. As you
That's
didn't
true.
notice the squirrels. I hope you're
Giraffes
being
and
facetious
squirrels. Yeah, if
on editing.
I'd
'cause
been
this
on
is
my
fun.
game, I would have used squirrels instead of hippopotamuses. And that's
Yeah,
also
we
something
play.
I didn't think we would say, but that's all right.
Yeah, we play
Uh,
a podcast bingo before we.
this has nothing to do with our practice, but it is a fun game for us. So, I think the other thing that's interesting is, besides you don't want to overdo the effort as you get started, but you also don't want to look at whatever you get on this journey as being a failure, because that's the
Absolutely.
other thing, right?
Yes.
We're going to see that, and people are going to be talking about it at the end of January. Well, you've already blown your diet. You've already given up on I don't know, jazzercise, or I feel 1,000 years old that I just said that out loud.
Hey, I know what you mean.
Yeah, or whatever it is you took on. It's February 1st, and you can't speak Spanish yet. So just what's the best way to approach what maybe looks like a failure to somebody who hasn't thought it through?
Beginning again and beginning again until you reach
Oh,
the point where you feel satisfied with whatever your goal is. I love resetting goals because sometimes, and also the slowdown of realizing when you even reach the goal that you're wanting previously, like sometimes I'll set a new goal and then realize 2 months later, oh, I already surpassed that goal that I had set previously. So, really just beginning again. And I also want to plug Victor real quick. He is excellent to meet with and to go over this stuff with you. And sometimes I'll just catch him and we can have that sit down, and he really it helps working toward, through these heavy emotions when it comes to self-discovery, self-love too.
So Victor is the director at TBC, and so most of our listeners are probably part of that Sangha, but certainly if you're not, that's someone that you can also reach out to via the internet, and you can do a Zoom call with him. But he's a tremendous leader and tremendous with that sort of help, really with any problem, because he brings a positive, dynamic view, funny kind of way, and love Victor to death. So the last thing I just wanted to hit on before we wrap this up is the important, maybe the best resolution to consider is just gratitude. And again, that kind of goes to self-love. Be grateful for who you are and how you are. Don't look at those as drawbacks, or just understand that with gratitude, that's just who you are.
Right. Gratitude aligns us with mindfulness and contentment naturally. So
That was beautiful.
thank you.
I swear. We hit upon how fresh starts aren't just for January, and I think that's so true. We know it to be true. So, embrace this time of year. Go ahead and try to come up with, if you feel like there are changes you want to take on, make sure that they're positive and you're comfortable sharing them. And feel free also to just say, hey, I'm good where I'm at. I'll just let it unfold and stay in the present moment and let it go that way. Jordan, thank you so much for, as always, coming on and co-hosting and sharing your wisdom and your candor with us.
You're very welcome.
Also want to thank our listeners for supporting this offering. Feel free to comment, question, and share if you're moved to do so. We're found on Spotify and on YouTube and a couple other different platforms, and all of them have comment sections that you can use. We can also be reached via email at omontherange@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. For the On the Range podcast team, my name is Whit, and I'm signing off, wishing you a happy new year and happy trails. Thanks to our On the Range production team for making this program possible, and to Mr. Brad Athey for composing and performing the original music. And to you, our listeners, thank you for being a part of this journey as we explore meditation, Western Buddhism, and the path towards a happier, healthier life. Remember, less suffering and more joy are available to everyone. It just takes practice. Until next time, stay grounded, stay kind, and keep finding peace in the simple, practical things. For all of us here at On the Range, happy trails.